Pamela Slim is an award-winning author, speaker, and small business strategist. She works with thought leaders who she calls Architects of Liberatory Change to scale their impact and income through the intelligent design of intellectual property. Pam and her team build certification and licensing programs with client partners, applying over 30 years of instructional development and training experience into profitable and scalable programs. Pam is the co-founder with her husband Daryl of K Community Lab in downtown Mesa, Arizona, where they work with community ecosystem partners to remove obstacles to BIPOC-led small business success and test and try new business ideas. Pam's first book, Escape from Cubicle Nation, From Corporate Prisoner to Thriving Entrepreneur, was released back in spring 2009 and won Best Small Business Entrepreneur Book of 2009 by 800 CEO Read. Her second book, Body of Work, gives a fresh perspective on the skills required in the new world of work for people in all work modes, from corporate to nonprofit to small business. Her latest book, The Widest Net, delivers a method for building an engaged and mutually beneficial network. It won Best Business Book of 2021 in the category of Sales and Marketing by Porchlight Books. Pam is frequently quoted as an expert in publications such as Business Week, New York Times, Money Magazine, and Psychology Today. She lives in Mesa, Arizona with her family. I think you can see why I invited Pam, because she is someone that I've admired for so long, and her book back in 2009 was the book I read when I left my corporate job and jumped into entrepreneurship. It was really scary, but Pam was there to catch me. She didn't know me back then, but her book took care of that. So a couple things that we're going to be talking about this episode are how she defines success. And she has a very interesting way of defining it. We talked about how loving your work doesn't make you a workaholic, which I loved that conversation. And in fact, when you watch the entire series, you're going to see that that's a through line all the way through. And also how living local is how you can make some of the biggest impact in the world. And you just probably aren't doing enough of it. So let's go talk to Pam. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
So happy you're here.
I am so happy to be here. I'm still glowing.
Yes, you are. I was talking to people about why I'm so excited about this particular interview, because I've admired your work for so long. You're one of the OGs in just business overall, but especially in helping women own their knowledge and helping them craft their intellectual property and teaching them how to take tiny moves to make stuff happen. And so thank you for being that person to all of us. And so we're talking about Femmefluence today.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I define Femmefluence as, what's your superpower? So what would you say that your superpower is?
I think mine is in first recognizing who I call Architects of Liberatory Change. There's a certain quality in somebody who constructs an idea and has the energy in order to get that out there in the world. So I just see it. I can just recognize it almost in a walking into a room. I can start to feel it.
Wow.
And then I love connecting them with each other.
Can you talk more about how, like, what is that? What is the liberatory? What do you see? Like, what is actually comes up for you when you see someone like that?
Of course, in order to know their work, I have to know what their work is. But in conversation, to me, liberatory change, we can look at change that let's find a new way of doing something, or let's save time for something. I think we need to replace harmful structures in the world about ways that we work and how we interact and structures of power with more liberatory structures. So they can be everything in my own client base, from data scientists that are reframing data equity to doctors who are really looking at a different way to deliver medicine. And so when I start to talk to somebody who really has an idea that is more in the shaping of this is a different way that we should be doing it for liberation and equity, that's where every hair in my body stands up and I get really excited. And then I think it's not necessarily about scales, because sometimes we think, it has to be somebody who's influencing millions of people. But it's more about deliberate, specific, connected intention of really being clear with the work and being clear with who they're doing their work with. And that can be in a local scale, like I see in my own community, and it can be people who share these structures all over the world.
That is amazing. I had that like whole body feeling when you said that. I'm curious, where does that come from? What's the origin of caring so deeply about liberatory change?
That's a really good question because I do think I grew up in Marin County, California, which is a pretty affluent suburb in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my parents did split when I was young. So my mom's a single mom. We didn't have tons of money compared to a lot of my friends, but it by no means was a struggle or a hardship growing up. When I became an exchange student, when I started seeing different parts of the world and just being interested and tuned in to different experiences, and then I had the good luck at 18 to meet my best friend, Desiree Attaway, who's an amazing woman who has an amazing body of work, a lot around equity and liberation. I think it was just finding and connecting with always understanding what are dynamics of power, who is here, who's not here, why aren't they here? That's like always my question when I'm walking into a room. And I don't really know exactly why, coming from my like white suburb roots in Marin County, California, why I feel such a strong power about liberation. But it's just something that I think really courses in my veins. My dad was very much an community activist in the environmental movement. He started the first curbside recycling program in 1971 in the state of California and has done years of work. But I don't quite know. I just know that it moves me to think about the amazing talent that is often that which is most structurally oppressed, and it's just wrong. And there's some reparation part for me too, in terms of my identity as a white woman.
Well, I got to tell you that for those of you who, we were having this epic conversation while we were both getting ready for this interview, and we're like, we should have put the record button on because I didn't know some things about Pam that I learned, like you've lived in Brazil, you've lived in Colombia, you've traveled the world, you know, and would you agree that also probably contributed a lot to things? Because I think some people just, they're not necessarily getting out, and I see why, and it can be very privileged to do so. But at the same time, if there's a way to travel, I always say that's one of the ways that you can actually become more empathetic and understand what equity really looks like.
For sure.
Would you agree?
It was my degree in college was economic development using non-formal education as a tool for social and economic change in Latin America. So it's a very long, specific role, but it really was looking at grassroots movements. And so, for example, when I was in Colombia, in Bogota, I was working in the outskirts of Bogota with women from that community where there was they were learning how to be teachers in their own communities because many had to leave to go to work and leave the kids at home, and there were accidents and all kinds of things like that. I've always loved grassroots movements. And so that was part of what I studied. And the more that I got into it, the more I loved it. And then just different parts of my life, we were laughing. I kind of have the Forrest Gump like you do.
Yeah, totally.
56 years now, I've done quite a few things. But same dynamics, you know, living in San Francisco, doing capoeira that I did for many years, and just really living in neighborhoods, building communities, in connection with families and hearing their stories about, you know, folks who have come through immigration, living, you know, undocumented, knowing the fear, worry that comes from that. It's like you said, the deeper in relationship that I've been with people, the more interested I am, you know, in the story, and just power dynamics are everything, and they play so many different ways.
By the way, I also learned that she is a black belt in MMA, y'all.
I'm just saying. So
okay,
don't
mess with Pam. That's all I'm saying. So tell me about how you create space for joy and creativity and fun inside of your life and your business.
I was thinking the other day, I don't really have hobbies because I do enjoy my life as I live it. That's my definition of success. So one is I find great joy in my family, and I really love spending time with them. I love just quiet moments at home in the morning, connecting. And those are just moments of joy that I have. And then in the work that I do, we have a community space in downtown Mesa, Arizona. And so I also find a lot of joy of just going on the streets, seeing my neighbors, checking in with people, because that's really joyful. And then in the work that I do day to day in helping people to really bring their IP to life, I'm doing things that are really energizing. And so sometimes we think of like joy needs to mean fun because I have a hobby, and I've done that at different times. I am thinking I'm ready for some kind of maybe movement or dance at this stage, just because that does bring joy. But I sit back sometimes and just smile and am in awe that what I do is so enjoyable. There's just a joy in the craft. I don't know if you feel that.
Yes,
yourself.
absolutely. I'm getting lit up as you say that, because one of the things I find so fascinating that people don't talk about, especially women, that it's okay to actually love your work. Like that doesn't mean you're overcommitted necessarily, or that's the only thing you care about. But same, I love business conversations. I love learning about other people's why they're here, why they're helping people in the way that they are through their craft. And it's so cool to like sit with somebody who gets that, because you have lived a very incredible life. And at the same time, I love the simplicity of what brings you joy at this moment in this season of life. And I just wanted to also point out that one thing that I really believe that I wish more people talk about is how being actively involved locally can be so transformative, and also a way, because sometimes we get overwhelmed with the world. Like, how can I change the things that I want to change in the world? And one of the things I learned growing up, because I grew up in a small, tiny town, and I grew up where people played outside, the neighbors knew your name. If your parents couldn't find you, like 2 blocks away, somebody knew where you were. It was Coconut Express kind of thing, because I grew up in Hawaii. But I brought that with me into adulthood. And in a world where social media is, kind of the norm for communicating now, which is fine and dandy, where I find peace is locally connecting with people. Can you talk more about that? Because tell us more about your center in Mesa and why you opened it, and tell me what you think about local connection.
Yes, I'm all about the local. So in 2015, I did a 23-city tour as early stage research for my book, The Widest Net, going to places where I'd done book tours before, really testing the model of this premise I'd really been working on since college about integrated community development, how to build community. And for some reason, in the very first session we did in Berkeley at Mothership Hacker Moms, a very cool local co-working space, that I asked the question, how many of you have ever seen an Indigenous leader speak on a business topic at a business conference? So I asked that question first in Berkeley, and then in 22 other cities around the US and in Canada. And at the end of the entire tour, only 7 people ever had, and 4 of those were in Vancouver, Canada.
Wow.
In the meantime, my husband had been a longtime business owner. I've been in rooms with thousands of amazing Indigenous business owners, graphic designers, accountants, you name it, insurance agents. Like, it's not that they weren't there. There was invisibility and really deliberate systemic invisibility.
Yeah.
And so part of what we said is, where we really want our kids and nieces and nephews and extended family to see all kinds of representation of themselves, but particularly in the work environment, that's kind of my jam is the work world. We thought, what could we do? And that's where we opened our space that is our office by day. But then we just opened it to be whatever it is that people wanted it to be, a place where they would feel welcome. We have tons of art. My husband has his ceremonial setup that's there in the space. And our favorite thing is where somebody like stumbles upon it. They usually see the art in the window and they're like, what is this place? And they come in and you just see an exhale. And for many, especially to me, it's like if it's especially a Navajo grandma, who'll be like, I'm just visiting, my kids here, and like, what is this place? And it feels so good. And then she'll talk to my husband and they'll find out how they're related by clan. And basically it's creating this space right in the middle of Main Street that historically has not been welcoming at all for Indigenous, Black, Asian, right, Latinx relatives. And so that really was like about as far as we got for the design of it. Let's just create a space where people can feel good. We'll listen to them to see what they want to do. And that pretty much has been the business plan all along. It's not monetized, although I say very clearly, so much of what happens there feeds my business in the relationship that I have with people, opportunities that it opens. So it's not, I'm very not surprisingly, a bit cynical sometimes about nonprofit initiatives, very colonial, like, well, I have the money and then here, let me give it to these groups. It's like there is a dialectic that even though there's not money being exchanged, there is huge connection, relationship, and value being built.
Yes.
And a lot of what we see that makes us the most proud is so many things that have come out of this space have been Indigenous, Black, Latinx, Asian entrepreneurs owning their own spaces or opening their own spaces. There's an amazing all Indigenous women-led space in downtown Phoenix called Cahokia that, a couple of the co-founders started out, in the space liking the feel of, what was happening there, and then have opened their own.
Wow.
There's a Navajo clothing designer that now has his own space. There's a Apache personal trainer that did meditation in our space for a long time, and then he opened up his own space. So that to me is what it's about. Just holding space for what people want, trusting the fact that they know what they want. And it's a pathology, can we say, in our coaching world and in just the general world.
Yes.
The assumption is, and I'll speak from behalf of my white relatives, that if there is an issue with entrepreneurs not flourishing, there's the assumption because they don't have leadership, skills, or knowledge.
Yes.
That 97% of the time is not the case.
No, not at all.
Right?
Exactly.
And I mean, of course, there's skills and knowledge, which is part of what we teach when there is a legitimate part of it. But mostly, there's not been access. There hasn't been loving, caring, like relational support. And what we see, like as a foundation where that's most of what you provide, then the rest comes, right? And then people be like, can you help me with my QuickBooks? Or like, I'm trying to figure out my branding.
Yeah.
But it's not like, let's open this 10-week program and try to pull in, like, let's connect with a Filipino, community. And they're like, who are you? And you don't even know me.
Right.
And why do you think that I need this training?
Right.
It's so insulting.
I love
and I'm
it.
sorry on behalf of
no.
my relatives.
I love it because what I'm hearing is you made space so that others could see that they could take up space.
Yeah.
And that is such a powerful thing. Again, local. And then it begat other good things, them having the confidence to say, I could do something like this and I could show off my skills, my craft, my wares, my whatever. And I love that it's community made. You were looking for the community to tell you, what do you need out of this space? And then it also feeds what I heard earlier, which is your joy, which is work. You're loving your work and it's all tied together. And see, things don't have to be so compartmentalized. We can do it all, right? In that way, I think when it feeds into each other, sometimes we try to kind of like, here's our life thing, here's our kids thing, here's our, our business thing, here's the nonprofit we support, all the things. And I love that you're demonstrating, like, let's just not be weird or awkward. Let's just get it done. Like, let's make it happen. Okay, so question for you. What's your advice for women specifically who want to be rich, recognized, and respected? What is the first step that you'd advise them to take in taking up that space and owning the fact that they want to be rich, recognized, and respected?
It is, to me, always centered around your body of work. So the riches, the recognition, whatever it is that's important and valuable to you is based on that work that you're deliberately creating in the world. And when the work is created in a relationship with who it is that you want to do the work with, true dialogue and understanding of what do people actually need, all of my decades of training and development nerdiness come to play because, like, I love to analyze a performance problem, and it's really fun to figure out what actually is driving somebody not being able to do something. And so when you focus on that and then develop a specific approach, that thought leadership, I define thought leadership as just your specific point of view about how to solve a specific problem that you really care about, that your ideal clients face. So you and I, we know that we probably work with similar people sometimes, the exact same individuals. When they're working on a certain part of their business, they want your point of view to be energizing that. And then maybe they want to be doing, licensing, building their IP, building their models. They might work with me. So we need multiple people that are providing different lenses. But that is the essence of it. If you're not actually creating something that is valuable to people you want to work with, that is not based on fear, manipulation, intimidation, and veiling, basically shaming people for not being a certain thing and just getting them to buy your stuff, which I don't believe in at all.
Yep.
And I know you don't either. And it's actually based on you standing on like it is hard to help people make change. It's hard for me to make change. Hard, like to grow a business, that is not easy. So for you to figure out the specific part that you can really work, create models, create ways of testing it, that over time you can begin to grow and expand into new markets. That to me is the essence of it. For some people, they love to really see like, this is mine and let me really demonstrate the fact that I created this and celebrate that. And for other people, it's more seeing the fact that that work is really getting out there in the world. And then whatever riches somebody defines, lots of money, little of money, like that's relative to what somebody wants to do.
We talk about there's so many different currencies of wealth too.
Yeah.
So, there's cultural wealth, there's relationship wealth, there's health wealth. And, so even when we talk about rich, recognized, and respected, mainly even for just, it's a definition for you.
Yeah.
Not even if people see you as that, but more, how do I feel, what's rich to me? How do I feel respected? How do I feel recognized? How do I feel seen and heard and understood, right? And I think we're all as human beings that's all we want really, and to be happy. So tell me something that you had to unlearn to get to where you are now.
I think early on in my journey of getting into business, which was different than international development, non-formal education as a tool of social change, which ended up coming back to business. But in getting into the world of business, for a long time, I thought, gosh, I really don't know anything. I was told sometimes, especially by male mentors, that you're too nice, you're focused on being too more relational, you have to be a little bit more, I'm trying to think of the word, calculating. You don't need to feel so much about what people are doing. You don't need to care so much. And I think for a long time, I doubted my like professional training within business or also some of the models. I think especially being in Silicon Valley, which was the first 10 years of my business, there's such a value on just scale for scale's sake.
Yeah.
And saying things like, you're only an entrepreneur if you have a whole bunch of other people working, you're not working in the business at all. And I just realized like if you are generating your own money through a business entity that is not somebody else's, you can call yourself whatever you want.
Yes.
And there are so many other elements that make up, like you said, business success. And I love it. I love financial growth. I always tell my clients, I love to hear when they're stuck and they text me, but I tell them like, take a picture of your contract when you get it. Like I want to know that moment, like when we've been working on this big project it makes me so excited. And I'm not necessarily personally energized first by money, like that comes after the impact, but I love to see revenue grow. So like that can be so energizing, but because it's a reflection of somebody who's really, getting in there. So I do realize like, depending on who I'm working with, it's exciting to see the financial growth, but all the other pieces. And I think the more time that goes on, especially if somebody is living an ethical life. And I just mean like you were describing, as I heard yesterday when we were together, that is according to an individual's values to really be in alignment with what truly you believe. That's not based out of fear, but is based on, I think in general, if you're tapping into values that really are based on your truth, they tend to be things that are a little bit more for your well-being and others.
Agreed. I love that. So tell me what's up for you next. Like what's something you'd like to do next? Life, business, anything coming up that we want to know about?
Yeah. So there's two things. One thing we're really excited about is my worlds have come together with the years of building programs for B2B clients, corporate clients, and then being a thought leader, writing books and working with a lot of thought leaders that there are people who are ready when their IP, their models, let's say they have a book, they have a program where they really want to expand it. We're doing a lot of very specific work to help people build licensing programs, certifications, because the market is really demanding it and getting great ideas further in really creative ways. So my whole thing these days is productized services. I'm like so jammed out on that of really dialing in what's the way in which we get the work done consistently, help our clients do the same thing for a scalable part of business that can be very lucrative, but
and
is
sustainable.
And sustainable.
Yes.
And it's based on like a real market, not
Yeah.
just your ability to do, a gigantic launch and hope and pray, people change. And nothing wrong with launches at all. But it's just, so that part is very exciting. And
Cool.
I have now a bigger team to do that. And then in the local side, our next step, probably in a year or so, is going to be to collectively buy a commercial building. So we're going to be moving to another close neighborhood from where our space has been, and really centralize more of a shared collective business ownership, and to be a central spot for business owners that are being displaced by a lot of the growth on Main Street.
Great.
To own their own buildings, own their own homes. And I'm just like,
now that's
all about
generational
that.
wealth.
Yes.
True generational wealth.
Yes.
Because when the community can own the property that they live in, so good. Okay, so we do this thing called the Femmefluence Fire Round. Are
Yes.
you ready?
Yes.
Okay, favorite book?
Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott.
Love that book. Favorite city, state, country that you've ever been to?
Lately, I am vibing with Edinburgh, Scotland. I went there the first time. It's where my Stuart ancestors are. My daughter and I are going back, and it feels like an ancestral journey. That's really beautiful.
Amazing. Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Someone you'd like to meet or be mentored by, living or not?
John Legend.
Hey.
If you're out there, pun intended, because that's a song. But John's my guy. I write about him in every book. I speak about him in every speech. He is an architect of liberatory change.
That is so funny
with him.
because my husband's obsessed with him too.
I like your husband even more.
There you go. One word that sums up who you are right now.
Content.
I love
Content.
that. So tell people where the best places to interact with you, work with you, find you.
PamelaSlim.com.
Perfect. And also all of that information will be underneath this video for later. Thank you so much for joining me. You are such an icon in this industry. I'm so grateful for everything you've done. I can't wait to work with you once we send out our unicorn team model to the world. So I will definitely be working with Pamela Slim. And thanks for all your books. Your book, Escape from Cubicle Nation, was one of the reasons I felt courage to leave my job, 15 years ago. So I'm so, so grateful about everything that you've done to help us all. So thanks.
I so appreciate it.
All right.